Today we're looking at something in the DeFi space known as impermanent loss, and if you're involved with the yield farming, staking, liquidity provider tokens, this is something that will be valuable to you because it's good to know that it's a thing and you're possibly going to see lower rewards than is expected when you look at a website like PancakeSwap or whatever decentralized exchange you're using and they show you a projected APR percentage. For those of you that are doing single token staking or lending, you may be wondering, does this affect you? No, it doesn't, but it is good to see when you're comparing the opportunity cost or the possible ROI of single staking versus liquidity providing and make a more informed decision by knowing which one is better for you. Binance has this great article that goes into detail about impermanent loss, but the main takeaway is that the loss comes from the fact that the token prices change over the period that you're providing liquidity. So the more that the tokens change, the bigger the impermanent loss will be. When you provide liquidity provider tokens to a liquidity pool, it's usually a 50-50 split, meaning if you're depositing $200, you'll need $100 worth of token A and $100 worth of token B. The amount of those tokens are going to be dependent on those prices. So let's go over this example where Alice deposits 1 ETH and 100 DAI into a liquidity pool. When she does that, the value of 1 ETH is 100. Now, over time, if the price of ETH changes while you're providing liquidity, that's where the impermanent loss can happen. If you're confused, that's totally normal. I was super confused about how this worked until I saw a couple examples and was able to wrap my head around it. So let's go over an example. I went ahead and recreated the example in Excel. Hopefully this helps visualize it a little easier to digest. So we have the $200 as the initial investment, Ether at 100, and let's say Ether went to $400. That's a pretty big increase in Ether. And the whole point of impairment loss is comparing the value of the liquidity pool if you were going to withdraw, let's say after a year, versus if you had just bought these cryptocurrencies, right? If you just bought ETH and DAI, the $200 split, and just held, what would it be worth? The difference between these two, you can see the value of the pool 400, the value of held 500. The value missed is the impairment loss. That's the whole point, is understanding the change in price ratios, how that affects the total value of the pool. But what we have to remember is that the reason people even provide liquidity is to get a certain APR percentage. So if you get 20% on this initial $200 investment, your APR gains would be 40, and the total value of your liquidity pool plus the APR gains would be $440. In this situation, it would have been better to just hold on to ETH. But of course, that's a pretty big increase in Ether. Now let's say if it just went up to 200, all of a sudden your current value for APR would actually be higher than if you had just held onto the 50-50 split on the initial cryptocurrencies. And this is why it's important to understand this impairment loss, because a 100% increase in Ether is only a 5.72% loss versus that giant increase to $400 means an impairment loss of around 20%. If you're wondering how I came up with that calculation in Excel to figure out the liquidity pool value after a year, don't worry, I'm not that smart. It's coming from this article that explains the constant product formula, how that works, and how you can actually figure out the value of that liquidity pool after a year. It's all about the price ratios of the tokens changing. And here's a quick cheat sheet on the price changes and how much loss it would equal. You can see the 4 times, 20% loss. So even a 25% increase in price of ETH with a stable coin pairing is only 0.6% loss, and it's really negligible. It's also good to remember that it doesn't matter the direction that the price of these tokens are changing. Up, down, if the price ratios are changing, it's going to lead to impermanent loss. At this point, hopefully your main takeaway is the more volatile the tokens in the pairing means the higher the impairment losses can be. Having a stable coin in the pairing reduces the impermanent loss, whereas if you have 2 shit coins that are constantly going up 90%, going up 500%, your impairment loss can be pretty big. But to counteract that, usually the APR and the rewards for providing liquidity for that crazy volatile pairing is much higher. If you want to know what I mean, go to PancakeSwap and look at the APR percentages. Looking at something like Cake BNB, BUSD, BNB, the APR percentage 35 versus 16. But if we sort by something like APR, you'll see that GMI BNB, FINA BUSD, these APR percentages are way higher, 167%. That's insane, right? But the question is, Because what the heck is Finna? I don't know. It's probably some very low cap coin that's volatile. And that's why you're getting paid a higher percentage because of that possibility of impermanent loss. The liquidity of this might go down over time if the project doesn't catch on and kind of goes away. So this APR percentage brings you into the project because it's high, but it can lead to losses if there's big changes in the price, as well as this APR percentage. Because we have to remember the estimated APR percentage based on $1,000 investment. It's going to show you everything related to the current pricing of those tokens, the current LP rewards, and that's where you can get yourself in trouble. The nerd that I am, I wanted to create a calculator that factors in those changes in price over a year, the APR percentage, and show what the potential ROI would be if you just hold cryptocurrencies with the assumptions of those price changes versus providing liquidity with those rewards and yield farming. So I did just that. I created this calculator. I know it's a little bit of a plug, but I got excited, made a form on the website, DeFi Impermanent Loss Calculator, and all you do is you come here, put the amount invested, the projected APR, token A's value, token B's value, what the reward token is priced at. Right in this section, you're going to put future token prices. So even if token A went from 0.31 to 0.1, token B is a stable coin, so it's going to stay 1. This assumes the same price for the reward token of 8. If you take all of that, everything else is automatically calculated. And it gives you a little summary down here of the value of the liquidity pool at the end, the impermanent loss. And then here's the cool thing. It shows you the ROI if you provide liquidity and all of this stays the same. And then it shows you what's the ROI if you just held. In this situation with the price of Finna crashing, you're much better off providing liquidity and making those rewards. In the situation where Finna explodes in price, goes to $6 from 0.31, right? This is all hypothetical. Your ROI for holding would have been 917% versus only 506 for providing liquidity. If you have projections for prices, or if you want to put in coins that are a little bit more stable and aren't going to be so volatile, you can play around with this and see the summary to see kind of the ROI comparison. I had also asked on Instagram for some feedback on the tool, and someone pointed out something pretty good. They wished that you could compare a single token staking or lending versus this ROI. I thought that'd be a little bit more confusing to incorporate that into the calculator, but it is a good takeaway, right? If you can provide liquidity, it's not always the best situation, right? If you're looking at something like Cake, maybe just staking Cake and getting the governance token may be better if you're just holding onto Cake tokens and want to compound that amount of Cake that you have, versus providing liquidity provider tokens for something like Cake and a stable coin that actually may be a lower ROI instead of just doing the single token staking where you're not even dealing with impermanent loss. So that's also something important to compare when you're deciding kind of what to do with your cryptocurrency that you're getting involved in the DeFi space. Is it even worth it to be a liquidity provider? Hopefully watching this video gives you a little bit more clarity on what impermanent loss is. If you're more confused than ever, I'm sorry I failed you. There's other videos, other articles that try to explain it. Maybe you need to read through it or just play around with that calculator. If you did get some important takeaways or enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Main Street Wolf where we talk anything to do with money. Thanks guys for watching and have a great day.